The only other big announcement I have is that I'm expanding outside of just Sonic videos this year. Not out of hatred for him, but I don't want to be trapped just making Sonic videos and only Sonic videos.
This feels like breaking sobriety. So, Sonic Racing CrossWorlds is releasing pretty soon. Or at least I think it is. Can you tell I'm recording this in advance? From the looks of things, thanks to trailers and the closed beta I got to play back in February, I'm actually looking forward to this game. Sure, it's not flawless, like the beta having some serious issues to do with powerful items being too common, making it really hard to stay in first place. Obviously some bugs they still need to patch out, and just some general things I'm just not that big of a fan of. But overall, these aren't fundamental issues and could be easily patched or fine-tuned before release day approaches. And they've already announced stuff like extra characters, such as Sonic Prime characters popping up in the Digital Deluxe Edition, and heavy teases that other SEGA IPs are going to be playable post-launch.
I wonder if they're going to be coming back for a rematch.
This means the world to me. It shows that they're not just going to dump out the game on release day, but they really want to support it post-launch. But with all this talk of Sonic Racing, and especially with CrossWorlds seemingly being somewhat of a tribute to every racing game of yesteryear, I thought now would be a good time to play every single Sonic Racing game that's come out so far, and see how good Sonic's time on the track has been up till now. By the way, before someone comments something like, I'm missing the iconic Sonic title, Sonic Racing Kart for the phone, I'm using Sega's official History of Sonic Racing video to see what counts as an important title. So yippee! No need to play Sonic Rivals, thanks Samuel.
I'll threaten you. I'll probably find your house.
But with that said, let's rank and review every Sonic Racing game, starting with... Okay, I'm going to try and speed through this one pretty quickly because, let's be honest, no one's watching this video to hear my thoughts on Sonic Drift. I do apologise to the two Sonic Drift fans watching this video. Sonic Drift is Sega's first ever Sonic racing game made for the Sega Game Gear. It was for almost a decade just a Japanese exclusive title, only being playable to other countries via collections, with the way I'm able to play it is through Sonic Origins Plus. Now, I'm not going to gas you up act like this game is some hidden gem masterpiece when it's just okay. For what it's worth being a small, portable racing game, I guess it does its job well. I just feel it generally lacks in the amount of content there is here. Like, I initially played the first Grand Prix and realised every track is based on Sonic 1. So with there only being 3 Grand Prix, I just assumed each cut was based around the 3 main classic Sonic games up to that point. You know, Sonic 1, Sonic 2, Sonic CD, because Sonic 3 hadn't released in Japan yet. But no, the game just only features 6 tracks and they're all just based around Sonic 1. So then I wondered if the difference is actually based around the CPUs, them getting harder on each cup. But one trip to the settings showed me I can just change the CPUs manually. So what's the point of there being 3 Grand Prix then? Honestly though, what's even the point? This game doesn't even feature any Knuckles. Let's just hope the sequel really fixes on this big glaring issue the game suffers from. Okay, this game's instantly better. Sonic Drift 2 really isn't a huge improvement over the first game, with it suffering from the same fundamental issues as before. I don't think it'd surprise you if I told you that this game technically didn't even release a full year after the first one. I mean, just by looking at them both, outside of small differences in stuff like the HUD or the game being less vibrant, it's overall pretty identical. I mean, this game is kinda better, but again, it's just by having more content than before. Like, instead of just having the 4 from the previous game, we get a whole new 3 characters being Knuckles, Fang, and Metal Sonic, pretty much featuring every main Sonic character in that point in time. Hell, this game even takes more locations from the newer games at that point, with Sonic 2 and 3 places showing up like Emerald Hill, Hilltop, Casino Night, and Ice Cap all making an appearance. Although, this game likes to throw in a couple original levels, which was cool in concept. A lot of them suffer from the same issue that Sonic Superstars of all games suffers from. I've never really stated my thoughts on Superstars, I just kind of think it's mid and inoffensive. Just an absolute 5 out of 10 game. But the problem with that game's original locales is none of them are truly breaking the mold, either reusing an already existing level theme like Sang Sanctuary and Sandopolis, or again, just not being very creative like fucking Frozen Base. Yeah, okay buddy. Tangent aside, this game has the same problem where outside of a couple like Emerald Ocean where you're driving on the water around an island, or the penultimate track, the Milky Way, where you're driving out in space with a sweet ending transition into the final track. But for most of these, they've got like one okay idea and drag it out for a whole track, like Rainy Savannah. Okay, sure, I'll remember that one. Oh, what the fuck?! Sonic R is just a weird game, man. Not only for just not having any follow-up in the future, but just on where it was released in Sonic's history. The game released in a really weird and uncertain time for Sonic. I mean, Sonic and Knuckles, the ending to the classic Sonic tetralogy, was about 3 years old by this point, and the big game changer Sonic Extreme had recently been cancelled, so the future of Sonic was kinda up in the air at that point. So what did Sega do? Why didn't this save the Saturn? Sonic R in the grand scheme of Sonic Racing games is such an interesting anomaly. The biggest and the most noticeable thing this game did was have a Sonic Racing game on foot, so yeah, you two don't count. I mean, I get why Sonic drives cars, because he apparently does it because it looks cool, and to make it fair, because damn, this game has some problems when it comes to the managing of character speeds. To start, this game has quite the oddball selection of characters, huh? Of course, we've got the titular main four in Eggman, yeah, that's a no-brainer. Metal Sonic, fair enough, he's pretty cool after all. And then we get these three. And you know, I was going to make the whole "what were they thinking" joke, but honestly, these guys are quite cool and creative. The Tails doll is honestly so cool, I can't tell if he's meant to be silly or frightening, but I still love him nonetheless. Metal Knuckles, still cool as hell, but still feels like a bit of a downgrade, especially when Tails gets his whole original thing. Going back to the Metal cloning comparison does feel a bit bland, but in comparison, nonetheless, he still looks really cool. And finally, we have Egg Robo. Yeah, this is probably just the cooler decision. Of course, with this now being a foot race except for a small few, it leads to the actual challenge of the game kind of fluctuating depending on the character. Let's look at any character in some sort of vehicle. They are instantly slow. Sure, Amy, thank God, gets a small boost to help her keep up, but poor Eggman and Egg Robo get these fucking missile attacks, and half the time it doesn't even work. I tried for ages during Radiant Emerald to try and snag her first, but Sonic the bastard was too fast. I had no way of keeping up with him. But on the other side of the coin, you've got Sonic, the fastest character in the game. Whilst collecting the last Chaos Emeralds I needed in Reactive Factory, I noticed I was in dead last. I was worried I'd have to restart since the only way you can get Chaos Emeralds is by snagging a first place. But I kid you not, less than 30 seconds later I'd not only gotten first, but whilst I was finishing up, they were only halfway down the track. That's honestly the biggest issue in my opinion. The easiest way to collect all the Chaos Emeralds and the character tokens, it's just best to stick with Sonic, it practically secures you a victory every time. The only time I had a somewhat challenge is whilst trying out the unlockable characters. I found it hard to keep first place because I found out one of my opponents is fucking Super Sonic. Again, best stick with Sonic or else it'll become another problem you'll have to deal with. The only other time I had a memorable experience with the CPUs was when I was unlocking Metal Knuckles. See, pretty early on, if you jump straight to the right, you can skip past this big roundabout which will most likely stick you straight in first place. But when racing Metal Knuckles, I got a little worried since he knew about the major skip too. But then the CPU started losing its mind and looping the same bits of track over and over again, and I ended up winning incredibly easy. And I was playing as Amy! But with all that said, I mean, I think this game's pretty great. I love seeing all these small shortcuts on every course allowing you to easily lap people if you know where you're going. Hell, sometimes you'll see the CPUs doing some sneaky stuff like skipping the roundabout like I said before. I love how every location can have varied times of day and weather conditions, allowing for tracks to be played in multiple different ways. Like when it's snowing, you can just run on the water without a care in the world. The locations themselves, whilst original, kind of just perfectly embody what Sonic was at the time. Tropical islands, old ancient ruins, power plants, and cities with just a whole casino built right into the middle of it. And god, how could I not talk about this game's OST? Every racetrack has an absolutely iconic voice track sung by TJ Davis. Kinda love how she barely has anything to do with Sonic, worked on this game and only this game and then fucking nailed it on the first try. Sure, every track is really corny and kinda cheesy, but like in the best way possible.
Can you see the sun is shining on me? It makes me feel so free, so alive. We all need to work together to build a better life, to make it what we feel. We have to make it real. Read about it, super Sonic Racing. Try to keep your feet right on the ground. You're the one that makes me feel so high.
And there we go. Only took us around 40 minutes to complete this one. Maybe there's a sense of bias since I played it a lot when I was younger, meaning I can kind of look past a lot of the jank like how characters take forever to do a turn. But for what it was, being one of Sonic's weird spin-offs in a really uncertain era for the franchise, it was pretty enjoyable, probably being the best game in that time period for Sonic. Okay, I've stalled it this long. It's time to head into the modern era. And after a 9-year absence, Sonic Racing is back with a brand new look called Okay, from this point going forward, I got a new mic, so I hope this is an improvement than the first third of the video, but yeah. This video is taking a while. Okay, here we go. This is the one. This, for me and a majority of Sonic fans, is the Sonic Racing game. See, what makes Sonic Riders stand out from any other Sonic Racing game is it said, fuck cars and let's go skateboarding. And it just works so perfectly. Like, whenever Sonic's seen in a car, it always feels a bit weird, and you obviously get the jokes of, why is he in a car? He can run! But on a hoverboard, no questions asked, it just feels right. This is also helped by the game's immaculate art design created by Hideki Maria, who was the Riders series main art director. These games just had such a sense of identity that allowed it to stand out from just another Sonic spin-off. The small outfit changes, the futuristic environments, and damn, how could I not talk about that opening? The opening really shows it off best that this game is something truly special, with this game's sick as fuck art style being on full display here. I love how this shit isn't just full style, there's some really good character moments baked into this thing. I love how Sonic, whilst being in last place, is still happy as ever while he's slowly catching up. Also shows some characterization for this game's original characters, the Babylon Rogues, showing that they take this way more seriously and not below cheap tactics like ganging up on Tails, leading Sonic to leave his first place position just to go back and save them. Hell, the praise doesn't just go for the game's opening, by the way. All the in-engine cutscenes have this genuinely funny, cartoony art style, with this game being the most expressive these guys have ever been, which is kind of sad when you think about it because this game is 19 years old. The models made exclusively for this game really help to make this game what it is and allows for those cartoony expressions I was talking about before, giving them more lankier proportions and giving them huge arms and legs again to give more dynamic expressions. Only place I think this game lacks in is just the CG cutscenes. Like, they're not bad, but they're definitely just not as good as games that came before and after this one. I mean, at least this game gets CGI cutscenes, we don't even get that nowadays. But wait, cutscenes? Yep, this is the first Sonic game up until now to feature a proper story mode, with it featuring fully animated cutscenes throughout, both in engine and CG at some points. And man, is this game's story fun. It's not insanely deep, featuring tons of lore shakeups or anything of the sorts. Just a simple Eggman is up to something and Team Sonic plays along to see what he's up to. Nothing more, nothing less. It's pretty good. Whilst this happens, we get to meet this game's rival team, being the Babylon Rogues. This team consists of 3 members, being Jet the Hawk, Wade the Swallow, and Steam the Albatross, and Storm the Albatross. The way this story mode functions is a lot more similar to Sonic Adventure 2, where on the hero side you pretty much just play through another classic Sonic adventure, where on the new team you get to see what the villains were up to and get a little bit more depth on what's really going on here. And well, Sonic Riders does just that. It's somewhat interesting though that you can't play Babylon's story right from the get-go, you have to play Team Sonic's first. I feel in SA2 they always wanted you to play the hero side first, so it feels more like they're just forcing you now to play the intended experience. They also just stick the final boss in Babylon's story where you play as Sonic? It's nothing interesting, I just really wanted to point that out. But back onto the Rogues themselves, I feel like they're pretty much the perfect Sonic rival characters to choose from. Obviously there's the main 3, Knuckles, Shadow and Metal Sonic, which I'm not surprised why the movies picked those to adapt first. But I feel everyone except like Knuckles just kind of stopped being rivals at a certain point. Shadow by the end of Adventure 2 is friends with Sonic, and even though he did suffer the memory loss, I feel they wouldn't get into a true rivalry per se due to them usually wanting the same goal, unless it's like a spin-off racing game, we'll see that later on. In Mel's case, he's more of an outright villain just wanting to replace Sonic, and Knuckles is just usually Sonic's friends nowadays, with Frontiers really being the only game since, I don't know, SA2, to really tap into that, easily being able to aggravate one another's energy. Jet and the rest of the Rogues, however, are just more easily able to be used as rivals, with there not really needing to be any big explanations for them to be there. Throughout the game, it's just so clear that Jet really only cares about being the fastest creature in the universe, and uses any opportunity he can to race Sonic and prove that he is faster. What makes this rivalry so good is it's so clear that Sonic really doesn't care that much. Like, dude's so humble, he really doesn't care about the title of being the fastest thing alive that much. So whenever he gets into a race with Jet about being the fastest thing alive, he's more just playing along because he enjoys the race. Again, Sonic's really humble if you think about it. He doesn't really care about labels, he's just He's just kind of a guy, you know? The game ends with Eggman's big Grand Prix thing working out as a massive ploy to get all the emeralds and Jet's key to Babylon Garden all in one place. Eggman did all this just to make Babylon Garden appear and to get the treasures within Babylon Garden. After an honestly pretty anticlimactic boss with a fucking genie of all things, I don't know what's going on anymore. We see what treasure this place has to offer. Again, the whole reason Eggman did any of this in the first place. Eggman then reveals himself to everyone by holding them all at like fucking gunpoint. Holy shit. Only to be revealed the big treasure really was just some magic carpet.
But what's this? No way!
This truly is peak voice direction. The game ends with Eggman realizing he just massively wasted his time, and Jet telling Sonic to be ready for whenever they face off in the future. Again, for the most part, this stuff is pretty low stakes, just two teams going at each other in a Grand Prix. But again, this is just a Sonic spin-off. All I really want is some cute, cool character moments, and I don't know, I'll be happy with that. Now that the story mode has been discussed, let's talk about the gameplay, you know, the main meat of the game, which, out of everything played so far, it blows it all out of the water, featuring a ton of intricate mechanics and complexities to make this game feel like it's not just another kart racer. But whilst this game has some really fun and adrenaline-pumping gameplay, it suffers from the fatal flaw that the game does a horrendous job actually teaching you these mechanics, sort of just throwing you into the deep end and just expecting you to pick it up along the way. Like, for example, did you know depending on which way you hold the joystick when going forward or backward on a trick ramp, it can sometimes completely change which pathway you take? Or if you're a speed character and we want to use a rail, if you're having a problem, you actually just need to press the jump button twice. Whose fucking idea was that? You've never needed to do that before. If you really want to play Sonic Riders but just don't know all the small intricacies the game expects you to know, I'd highly recommend a video by PSP Man called How to Play Sonic Riders. It helped me in small areas I was confused about previously, like the mentioned multiple pathway ramp thing. So if you're playing through the story mode and getting really stuck on a specific track because you don't know all the intricacies, I'd recommend checking them out. But once you actually get the mechanics down, this is some of the most fun I've ever had in a Sonic racing game. Hell, a racing game in general. It's a game with a clear get good or get lost mentality to it. With the more times you play the tracks and see some of the shortcuts made for specific types of characters, the better you'll be at the game. Like, since you're all playing on hoverboards, you'll have this big meter on the side of your screen called an air meter, and this meter is something you've got to worry about at all times. It'll go down just by playing on the board, but whenever you use an ability like boosting or drifting, it's going to go down a lot quicker. So the game expects you to just have some air in the tank at all times just so you're able to use the boards. Because if you ever run out completely, it forces you to run on foot like a dumbass till you get some more air. And it's not something unfair where the game sometimes just give you small doses of air. Surprisingly, air is kind of all over the place. There's easy ways to get air at all times, whether from item boxes, tricks, using character specific abilities, using rings to level up your air meter and allowing you to store more at a time, or just use the small pit stops around the track. This is a huge risk and reward, since it'll give you the max amount of air you could get at the time, but to compensate, it'll keep you at a complete stop, allowing racers to possibly speed right past you while you're gaining air. So it's something you should only really do if you have tons of distance on your opponents. Again, it's a huge risk and reward, and that's why I love it so much. But I mean, even after you've played through the main story mode, there's still a lot of extra post-game stuff you can do. Of course, you've got every track from the main story mode that you can now play as any character, but you can also play these two extra SEGA themed tracks based on a lot of their other IPs, with some of those other IPs showing up as racers such as Knight from... I'll let you take a guess on where they're from. Ai from Super Monkey Ball and Ulala from Space Channel 5, all appearing as playable characters. We also feature some extra Sonic rep who just aren't playable in the story mode, such as Eggman himself, Krim the Rabbit, Rouge the Bat, Shadow the Hedgehog, and the robots used as CPUs in the story mode. Hell, there's even a Super Sonic you can unlock. There's also a mission mode, a tag mode, a survival mode, and a shop where you can buy even more boards. The story mode truly is just like the tip of the iceberg of what you can do in this game. There's so much more below it. TLDR, Sonic Riders rules. This is such a visually pleasing game with the actual substance to back up the visuals and make it not just style over substance. Obviously making Sonic Riders the best Sonic racing game yet by far. And obviously since Sega had such a banger on their hands, they obviously evolved the gameplay with the following sequels. What do you mean no? Well, that wasn't exactly what I was hoping for when it comes to a sequel. Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, released for the Nintendo Wii and PS2 a little under 2 years after the release of the original game. It features mainly the same team as the first game, minus Yuji Naka as the executive producer, as he'd left SEGA in 2006, just a couple months after the original game's release. Of course we know he went on to some greener pastures, but we're getting sidetracked. Now, whilst this game brought back the same dev team as the original Riders, I feel in between games they were definitely influenced by some bad faith criticism from the original game. Yeah, I didn't really mention this in the first game segment, but at the time of release, Sonic Riders wasn't very well received. The game wasn't bashed to bits like other Sonic games at the time, but it wasn't a 10 out of 10 masterpiece either. There was a consistent criticism towards the gameplay and how hard and complex the mechanics were to understand. And in classic Sonic fashion, the way they decided to fix this is just by overcorrecting the problem. Now, this is nothing new. This is an issue we still suffer with today. Like, Frontiers when it launched, whilst not being a huge issue, was critiqued for feeling pretty easy for the most part outside of the original game's final boss. And when it came time for the free updates that intentionally tried to take on board criticisms by the fans, it led to the big final and a little over ambitious Final Horizon update to have some overly hard challenges to the point where it didn't even feel playtested. For Riders, instead of just making a better tutorial to explain the controls, they just made the game more simple. A clear place this can be seen is when it comes to the air mechanic. In the first game, it was an actual challenge to make sure you have air to boost and drift, but also just have some so you can even stick on your board. In Zero Gravity, the air mechanic is barely recognizable, as it doesn't even run out over time like it did before. The only times you'll see your air meter run out is with the Zero Gravity gimmick. The big Zero Gravity gimmick can be used in two ways. One is to drift around corners. Yeah, they did just kind of repackage the drift with some new effects and considered it a new move. I mean, it looks cool, but that's not the point. And this free-falling ability that allows you to fly with all the debris being pushed aside so you can use it to go faster. This is something I only learnt during the final boss. The only other big change is to the level up system. Instead of allowing you to hold more rings and air, it can allow you to activate the character's special abilities. I don't really like this due to this being something I could always do from the start of the race in the original game. But again, it's not insanely hard to level up, so it's like a little issue, but not a big deal in the grand scheme of things. One of the more smaller changes, but is very much disheartening to the whole style of the Riders series, is to the trick system. All you had to do was hold down the button on a ramp and then just flip the joystick as many times while remembering to keep some time to get on the ground. In Zero Gravity, well, you just press a button and that's really it. Apparently there is some more complexity to this game's trick system, but I never felt like I needed to learn it to get good at the game, unlike the first game. The gameplay as a whole is something that's holding this game back from being a truly great sequel to the original. Whilst the first game's mechanics were hard to pick up and play with, I won't lie, once you got the hang of it, it was really rewarding swiftly drifting around corners or doing insane tricks. Zero Gravity is definitely the easier game to learn, but it lacks a lot of the substance that made the original Riders so fun to play. Again, all you needed to do was give us an optional tutorial to help people understand how to use the extreme gear. But maybe we're looking in the wrong places here. Maybe there's other places where this game really excels. And I mean, similar to the last game, there's another story mode here, which is quite similarly structured too. Although unlike the first game's pretty simple story with a little chaotic twist near the end, Zero Gravity's story is a lot more deep, focusing on a robot uprising which is caused thanks to the same reasons the characters can go zero gravity in this game, that being the arc of the cosmos. I don't remember fully what happens, mainly due to the length of time from playing the game to writing this part of the script, but I will say the scale of events of what happens has been elevated tenfold, definitely trying to be more of a story taken seriously than the previous game. Although this does mean this game kind of loses the original story's simplistic charm, due to all the stuff with the arc of the cosmos all tying back to the Babylon Rogues, again something exclusive to the Riders games. It definitely makes this story to do with the arc of the cosmos feel a bit pointless and inconsequential to the larger Sonic universe. And I know I don't expect a Sonic spin-off to drop some insane Sonic lore, so I'd rather these games have a more simplistic story kind of vibe to them, you know? Am I making any sense? No? Sounds about right. Anyway, TLDR, felt the story was a bit too complex for me, but the ending with a black hole was pretty fire. Although to give credit where it's due, this game definitely has the upper hand of the more improved voice acting, with the 4Kids cast definitely having a lot more time to hone in on their craft. Since this game released somewhat towards the latter half of the 4Kids cast lifespan with these characters, it shows how little time it took them to understand these characters and truly make them their own. Jason Griffith as Sonic especially shows this. Listening to his early stuff like in Sonic X compared to a lot of his later stuff like Zero Gravity, Unleash and Black Knight shows why he's become so many people's definitive Sonic voice.
Well, guess I'll find out soon enough. Listen, it's like I said before. Isn't there more to being a knight than serving a king?
Although improvements can't really be said for the animation, because boy is it a bit of a downgrade. Well, maybe not an insane downgrade, because as you'll see later it can get a lot worse. But because I can only assume the game's more serious story direction, we lose a lot of the more anime, cartoony expressions from the original game. Sure, the character models themselves have decently improved between games, but due to the lack of them not being allowed to go so cartoony and exaggerated, it always feels these guys are being held back a little bit or restrained from showing off how expressive they truly can be. The only real thing that's genuinely improved in Zero Gravity is the environments. The first game tapped into the futuristic cities here and there, and they look pretty good. In Zero Gravity, they straight nosedive into that vibe, and it was 100% worth it. Megalo City, Metrotech Premises, and Nightside Rush are all brilliant examples of this game trying to push the futuristic Y2K aesthetics the first game tried to embody. Although even though before I brought up how some of the cutscenes animations felt a bit held back due to the lack of cartooniness from the first game, I will say the upgrade in CG quality has gone up pretty high. I couldn't exactly figure out who made Riders 1 CGI, if it was Blur Studios, Marza, or Sega's personal team, but I definitely know this is when Marza took over as Sonic's main man for CGI, and what an upgrade I must say. Sonic first using the Arc of the Cosmos, the black hole sequence, Knuckles' fangs? These guys never miss. Also, it's interesting looking at this game specifically since this is just before Unleash came out, forcing Sonic into a static model he still uses to current day, which does actually affect the CG. Obviously, not a problem with Unleash specifically, but it is a downside from that game. In conclusion, this game's just kinda meh for me. Whilst this game at least keeps the signature Riders art style and aesthetics, when it comes to the substance of the gameplay, it's lacking any of the complexities which, whilst hard to master, is what made the original Riders so beloved and replayable. The best way to explain it is, while working on this video, I've gone back to play through some of the games I actually found fun. For example, I played a lot of the OG Riders whilst working on this video, and it's been a ton of fun. I have not gone back to Zero Gravity once since I finished recording that segment, so take that however you want. On its own, this game's alright, even good at points, but when looking at it as a sequel to the original Sonic Riders, this game just kinda comes off as mediocre. But hey, we've got one more game left. Maybe the Riders series is gonna go out on a big bang, right? Right? Oh. Sonic Free Riders, the big swan song to the entire Riders sub-series, was made to be a launch title for the newly made Xbox Kinect. Do I need to explain why this game kinda sucks? Now, based on how I played the last two Riders games via Dolphin Emulator, let's just say I'm keeping the trend of not playing it on an actual console. Whilst I actually own a copy of Sonic Free Riders thanks to the Sonic Symphony video of all things, I have no idea where my Kinect from back in the day is now, nor do I really have the space in my room to properly use it. So to allow myself to truly experience the true finale of the Sonic Riders series, I'll be using Xenia, the Xbox 360 emulator, and the life-saving mod that is the No Kinect patch mod. This mod allows you to take the middleman of the original game, which was the Kinect, and now allows you to just be able to play the full game on a controller. Stuff like body movements like leaning or waving your hands have now been moved to different buttons like the bumpers, the triggers, you get the idea. Now I can already see people commenting something like, how can you review Sonic Free Riders if you're not playing it the way the devs intended? And honestly, I kinda can't argue against that. Sure, I've used emulators for the previous games, but changing from a GameCube controller to a PS5 one doesn't actually change the general experience of those games, which this would do. But from the horror stories I've heard from people who played it on original hardware, yeah, I dodged a fucking bullet. But to give a quick synopsis on what this game is, back in the days before the huge Sonic boom backfire, Sega would try to put any sort of Sonic game on a game console at some point in time. Like, if you were a 2000s video game console, there was probably a Sonic game on your system at some point. In the late 2000s, there's the infamous story of Sega cutting 06's team in half to get a Sonic game out for the Wii. Obviously, this would eventually lead into Sonic and the Secret Rings, which released 3 months after the Wii's launch. Then the Wii U was coming out, so Sega dropped Sonic Lost World 11 months after that release. The Kinect is dropping soon, so Sega dropped Sonic Free Riders as a launch day title for the Kinect. Hey, they kind of did that recently with Sonic X Shadow, making a port for the Switch 2 so it could be released on launch day. The point is, if there's a video game console, Sega's gonna try and put Sonic on there, no matter the quality. And obviously, with the Kinect being seen as a pretty shit accessory, even at launch, yeah, it's not hard to tell how this game was perceived. Being on a lot of the worst motion control games or worst Kinect games rankings. So, you know, obviously my expectations are now through the roof. As I stated a minute ago, I can't give an exact accurate review of the gameplay because I'm not playing it the way the devs intended me to play it, but I will try and give what I can. Sonic Freeriders is a game that was made with the Kinect's motion controls down to its very core, meaning actions like turning or getting a boost is something you need to do by moving your body. Now, obviously on a Kinect, this sounds like hell on earth, but honestly on a controller, it allows the more frustrating motion controls to become more fun and enjoyable to play with. Hell, I'd argue I was having a lot more fun playing this than I ever did Zero Gravity. Putting your hand out to grab out bars that allow you to go in a completely new shortcut, or actually having to prepare your jump at a trick ramp to get a better result is so enjoyable. Obviously it doesn't hold a candle to the original Riders, but it feels like a passable middle ground between the original and Zero Gravity. Although again, this isn't an accurate review if you want to play Freeriders on original hardware. If you want to hear a more accurate review of Sonic Freeriders using an actual Kinect, I'd recommend Jay's reviews video from a few years back. But watch this video first, please! Alright, I can't accurately discuss the gameplay, but at least this game also has a story What the fuck is this? So instead of having actual cutscenes with characters emoting and moving, we're now just stuck with PNGs that they cycle through depending on the emotion. I'll say the TV news thing they're doing with Omo Chow is cute, I guess? It's definitely neat for like 5 minutes or so, but it isn't super charming enough to make up for actual animated cutscenes. Well, I mean, hey, at least the voice performances are gonna make up for it, right?
Feeling good. I'm looking forward to seeing the sights as I tear through such a beautiful town.
Alright. Starting with Sonic Freeriders, everyone from the 4Kids cast, except a certain someone, were all recast after Sega didn't want to renew the contract with 4Kids, with this being the first game to feature the still active Studiopolis cast, with actors like Roger Craig Smith as Sonic, Cindy Robinson as Amy, and Kirk Thornton as Shadow, all being actors that still play these characters to this day. Now obviously there's no hate towards the actors themselves, well except maybe one. Make that 2. But people like Roger, Cindy and Kirk and the rest are just doing their jobs and obviously didn't want to boot out the 4Kids cast. Again, they're the actors, it really wasn't their decision. They all seem like really nice people behind the scenes and I hope nothing but the best for them going forward. But with that said, I don't really like their voices for these characters. Well, sometimes. It's no secret the current Studiopolis cast have been the most poorly mismanaged set of Sonic VAs when it comes to actually keeping the characters' voices consistent. Like, let's take Roger Craig Smith as Sonic, as he's obviously appeared the most and the longest. Here's how he sounds in Sonic Freeriders.
Jet, why am I not surprised to see you in the finals?
Here's how he sounds in the Sonic Boom TV show.
These pizza-related incidents are becoming all too common.
Here's how he sounds in Sonic Frontiers.
No, but I'm also worried about you. You can't help anyone if you're stuck in limbo.
And here's how he sounds in Shadow Generations.
Yeah, sorry, but that Chaos Emerald and I have a date with a monster.
You see what I mean? Again, this is an issue with Roger or any of the VAs, but Sega and their voice direction. This was best shown off last year with the Shadow Generations Tokyo DLC, where they got big movie star Keanu Reeves to voice unique dialogue for the DLC. And the difference between the DLC, which was recorded by Sega, and his appearance in the third movie, obviously done by Paramount, is a night and day comparison.
I feel as if I've left my own dimension. I don't look like you. You look like me. Why do you look like me?
Anyway, we're getting a little sidetracked here. If you want to hear more, I'd recommend X-Pool's The Varied Voices of Sonic video, which goes way more into the voice differences between Sonic VAs. Anyway, TLDR, this game's voice performances just aren't very good. Anyway, the story itself is also not very good. It's more or less the same premise of Eggman sets up a Grand Prix for ulterior motives, but just without any of the sauce that made that original story so good. See, the story mode, instead of wanting you to do the traditional hero story then Babylon story, this game instead gives you 4 teams and a final story, more akin to Sonic Heroes than Adventure 2. We've got Team Sonic, the Babylon Rogues, Team Dark without Omega for some reason, and Team Rose without Big for some reason. I have to assume this was done because Big was getting dunked on a lot at the time for just being stupid, and since Sega heavily listened into what those types of people said, they just cut him from the game and instead just replaced him with Vector. I mean, I'm not complaining, Vector's the GOAT. He's honestly the only funny character in this game, constantly just going on about his debts and how he urgently needs to pay them off. But outside of that, there's nothing really of note here. The only other issue with this story mode is just how repetitive it is. Like, yeah, the last 2 game story modes weren't masterpieces of anything. They were more or less just glorified Grand Prix with cutscenes. But this game will just have races that are only a single lap and just a ton of boring ass missions. And each story would end the exact same way, needing you to fight a rival team twice. Once that'll be 1 lap, and there'll be some sort of lame ass excuse to force them into a big rematch with you now needing to play the same course again, but now it's being 3 lap. Again, this wouldn't be so bad if it were 1 or 2 times, but again, there is 4 teams in this game, so you need to do this 4 times. Like, it gets to a point where I don't feel like I'm playing a Grand Prix, but just a bunch of chores. Like, the story mode will talk about how people are messing up on the track and whatnot, but no one's on my track. I'm literally just doing side quests here. No Knuckles, the robot was not making clicking sounds on the track, because it wasn't on the track. We were breaking ice clusters, bro. This all culminates in the final story where, big whoop, there was no real grand prize, and this was a big scheme by Eggman, where somehow no one actually knew it was him. I thought the whole King Dot thing was everything everyone saw right through, but no, they are actually genuinely surprised it's him. Turns out Eggman's scheme this whole time was just to collect everyone's racing data to become the fastest racer. Say what you want about the other 2 plots, but I feel like Eggman would definitely at least have a look into what these things were about. Being the fastest racer is just something I don't feel like he'd ever really care about. Anyway, after a 3 lap race against him, it turns out he was given fake racing data by his partner in crime, Metal Sonic. Not only did it reveal that the robot Team Dark has been working with was technically Metal Sonic, pretty anticlimactically, but Metal Sonic can't even copy data. That's something that he can only do when he's Neo Metal Sonic. Anyway, you race him on the same track for a 3rd time at this point. Each time it's been 3 laps, so we've been racing on the same track for 9 times. But we end with Metal Sonic getting away. Apparently there's no animation for that. And again, Eggman stated he'd had no money that he actually promised. But you know, as Sonic said, we all had fun. Tell that to the kids with strained legs, Sonic.
Here's looking forward to the next exciting World Grand Prix!
Oh shit, I don't think he got the memo. Again, there's not really much here to simply say. It feels like it's more here for the sake of Riders' tradition than a level of care or effort. Honestly, I enjoyed playing just random tracks in free play than I ever did during the Grand Prix, because it just cuts out the boring missions and 1-lap tracks. But hey, what about those visuals? I mean, even in Zero Gravity, it surely was an improvement, even if the gameplay wasn't. So how does Free Riders look? Oh, come on! Okay, so you know the cool Y2K futuristic aesthetic with the lanky and cartoony models? Yeah, but what if Sega hated fun? The game just looks sanitized in comparison, using a model more in line with what he looked like in games like Unleashed or Colors. I'd say the UI is fine and more what I'd expect, but the environments and the character designs just look completely off here. Apparently this game still features Hideki Maria as lead art director, so I have no idea what happened here. Whether Sega interfered to force it in line with the current Sonic branding. Either way, it's a huge downgrade compared to the first 2 games. In conclusion, Free Riders just fucking sucks. Sure, thanks to the No Connect patch, it isn't miserable to play, but now it's just kind of boring. All it's got is having an insanely good main theme being free. Arguably the best main theme out of the entire Riders series. But this game wouldn't feel like a straight up Dishonor if it didn't kill the Riders series. Sure, the Extreme Gear is finally coming back in CrossWorlds, but that's only as an optional type of play. And again, that's after over a 15-year wait, with fans clamoring Sega for some sort of Riders 4 or a sense of revival. Again, in the grand scheme of Sonic blunders, it isn't a real big deal, but it just killed a fucking great sub-series, and it's a damn shame. The Riders series is one that suffered from Sega listening to the wrong criticisms and trying to catch quick trends. Sayonara, you beautiful bastards.
What would it take for you to make a simple speed transition into the known, from the unknown, and free this wild temptation into the free and then starving me into the ever knowing. Felt so constrained, felt so ashamed, but now I'm breaking out. I'm falling free in the wind, in the wind. Free to be me in the wind, in the wind.
Anyway, where were we? Oh right, the replacements. 9 months before the series killer that was Sonic Freeriders, SEGA dropped another Sonic Racing game, which was a lot more of a traditional kart racer. This was called Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, releasing for all major platforms at the time. Now, as stated before, unlike Riders being a lot more out there with the hoverboards, All-Stars Racing is simply just a kart racer to more actively compete with the juggernaut that is Mario Kart. Again, overall, it's a lot more scaled back, no story mode and only one CG opening. Not even any original voice lines, just featuring the at the time 4Kids cast using out of context lines from past games. Simply all you got is a Grand Prix, a few missions and free play. That's about it. Again, definitely a lot more scaled back compared to what the Riders series attempted. The only big difference this game has compared to what's come before is that it isn't just a Sonic game, but more of a larger crossover featuring a bunch of different Sega IPs. Obviously Sonic got the most representation, let's not kid ourselves, but there is a reason why they called it Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. We've got Super Monkey Ball, Billy Hatcher, Samba de Amigo, Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, and even Choo Choo Rockets all make appearances as racers to play as. The main thing to talk about here, of course, is the gameplay, and honestly, it's just kind of alright. Not insanely bad, but not much of a game changer. It's just kind of alright, meh. The only issue I had was when drifting as Sonic, because I found it really hard to turn corners. But the minute I turned into Shadow on his bike, I was winning every race with ease. A lot of tracks I feel focus on taking as many sharp turns as they possibly can, so I'd say pick a character with turning as a focus and you'll probably be fine. I won't lie and say track variety isn't great either. They're all based on the same couple locales. Like take Sonic's for example, all Sonic's locations are based off Sonic heroes, being Seaside Hill, Casino Park, and Final Fortress, which don't sound too bad, but when you realize each Sonic track is going to be one of those 3 locations, it's going to get old really quickly no matter how different the tracks themselves are. Definitely doesn't help that this game kind of lacks original music when it comes to the levels. Each track just rips the original game's music, which again, sounds good, but again, that'll mean you'll have to listen to Seaside Hill, Casino Park, and Final Fortress 3 times. Again, just a lot of the same over and over. One of my only merits is the variety of cars that display here. We got Sonic in a sports car, Tails is obviously heavily based off a plane, Shadow's just on his bike, my guy Crazy Joe is just taking a taxi. They're all in entirely unique vehicles, which allows them to kind of stand out on the track and makes the game look a bit more cooler. Overall, Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing is fine, but overall just kind of inoffensive. Apologies if this feels a lot shorter compared to how long I went on about each Riders game, but just to simply be honest, there was a lot more to talk about there than there is here. Sure, I didn't play the mission mode, but I feel from what I've seen, I don't think it would have changed my mind that much. Again, the game is just okay at the end of the day. Like, if you go around to a friend's house or somewhere and they don't have Mario Kart, but they have this, it's an alright alternative. But with Freeriders being an utter bomb and All-Stars getting meh to alright reviews, all Sega saw out of this was the Rider series was out and the All-Stars were in. So with a pretty middle-of-the-road starting point, let's hope they actually innovate upon the next game and make it at least a little bit more memorable. And just like that, Sega drops peak when you least expect it. After only 2 years of development, Sumo Digital returned with a sequel that had no need to be as good as it ended up being, introducing Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. A game that just so casually in my opinion is probably the best kart racer like ever. Of course, due to the amount of style and multiple modes featured in the Riders games, it's still on top of course. But what is here has been pushed to its full potential and feels way more fun to go through. It definitely feels like Sumo Digital was let more control this time and allowed to make it more personal and more different to Mario Kart, especially compared to the last game, which kind of just felt like a straight up copy. Now, one of the first differences you may have noticed is in the game's title. Like, why cut the Sega part of All-Stars Racing? Well, let's just say this isn't a Sega crossover anymore. I refuse to believe whoever made the roster for this game was entirely sober. Like, who do we add to this Sonic kart racing game? How does TF2 sound? We've got some Sega regulars, you know, Crazy Taxi, Super Monkey Ball, and Samba de Amigo. Knights is now moving up in the world from flag person to being turned into a car, the poor bastard. A fucking Dreamcast VMU got in who can turn into a Dreamcast controller on water. Danica Patrick, yet the real car driver is also a playable character. And fucking Wreck-It Ralph. I assume he's here for some sort of agreement to allow Sonic in the Wreck-It Ralph film. And I mean, hey, it gave us this banger of a trailer, so I'm not complaining.
Hey, Sonic! What are you doing in the car?
They didn't even make him a new fucking render. It's just how he looks from the film. Oh, and you know, you've got some Football Manager. Good to see we've got some good British representation in this game. So yeah, I'm still kind of baffled on how this happened exactly. A part of me feels they let in Ralph really early on, so it just opened the floodgates to whoever they wanted to add in the future. I mean, I'm not complaining though. Watching friends open this game up for the first time with zero context and absolutely losing their shit by seeing the crazy crossovers this game has, it honestly makes this game super accessible to people who aren't Sonic fans. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if it boosted the game's sales a little bit. Now obviously this is where the typical Sonic gimmick comes into play, but this time it actually adds to the experience. The main gimmick for this game is obviously the transforming mechanic, which allows you to turn your car into a boat or plane depending on the circumstances. And again, this is incredible and allows the tracks to get more creative, with you sometimes having to go from car to plane mid-lap. It also just allows a new level of spectacle to make these tracks come off more alive. Like on the Dragon Canyon track, just seeing the course in front of you explode, forcing you to become a plane, is so creative and as if we're moving on the fly. Or on the Afterburner stage, where you're going back and forth between these two big battleships, using boats and planes to get between them. And that's not even mentioning this game's controls just being so much better this time. I feel like I'm in complete control of my vehicle, so anytime I mess up, it's my fault, not the game. This game also features the idea of console mods, allowing you to have better attributes on your car, like better handling, acceleration, power, you get the idea. Also, this game just features the best trick system since the original Riders. In this game, you're allowed to do stunts, which allows you to flip your car around whilst in the air. But what makes it so fun is learning how many times you can do a trick at a certain point. Because if you get reckless and overdo it, you'll get a stunt fail, stopping you dead in your tracks, compared to completing a stunt where you'll get a boost when you hit the ground. It also helps that this game features so many different types of tracks, unlike the original All-Stars, which all were based around the same couple themes. Each track is based off one specific thing, instead of suffering from the same replication issue. Like, again, let's take Sonic for example. In this game, you can go through Ocean View, Starlight Carnival, and Sky Sanctuary, all having one track on those locations, unlike the last game where you'd get 3. The only things returning from the last game is a set of 4 tracks known as the Classic Cup, which just kind of brings back 4 stages from the original game. And whilst you can't do the transformation mechanic here, it instantly becomes better than the original just due to the controls. And since we're back on intended hardware, I was able to play with friends on the somehow still active online mode. Even though another sequel has released for a while now, people have still decided to stick with Transformed. But I mean, I understand, the online mode for this game is so fun. Obviously there is the typical races which were already fun, but there's other stuff like a battle mode or a capture the flag mode changed to chows. Again, there was no need for these modes to be as fun as they are, but having these crazy items like fireworks being shot at each other while we're just trying to put chows in goals is truly a sight to behold.
Move, move, move! I need this! Please, Speed, I need this! One good day.
Again, whilst it isn't endless or anything, it's so fun and replayable. Hell, sometimes I'll just boot up the game to play single player, or even the matchmaking to play with real people. In conclusion, Transform is instantly the second best Sonic racing game of all time. The fact we went from a surface level generic kart racer that barely resembles what I think of when it comes to Sonic, to a more fleshed out and stylized game which still stays in the same arena as Mario without just copying him. Honestly, if I could recommend any game in this video, it would be this one. Riders 1 is better in my opinion, but it isn't super accessible to current gen hardware. Also, it isn't as easy to just pick up and play, so. But Transformed is still up on Steam and still playable on Xbox via backwards compatibility. Sorry if you're a PlayStation or Nintendo guy, I guess. But for a £15 game, I've spent so many hours in this and it's been nothing but fun to play through. Alright, since we've had such a big bump in quality, I do wonder what the last game is going to give us. I mean, Sumo Digital is still with us and with a longer dev time. I just hope they have something big in store for the ending of the All-Stars trilogy. You see, this game feels like it should be so good and probably one of the best games on the list. But it just isn't. Like, we've got a fully Sonic-centered cast, customizable cars, a story mode, and Crush 40 is finally back doing the main theme. But all of this just isn't that good. 2019's Team Sonic Racing is a game again, on paper, should have been incredible, but due to what SEGA was, it never had the chance. Since I think we're finally out of the meta era and all its weird side effects are officially behind us, but back in the mid to late 2010s, Sonic was probably at his most unpopular point. Sonic Boom did a big number on SEGA, it led to Forces being a budget title, Mania was the only Sonic game SEGA ever promoted, and it just left TSR just kind of in this weird middle ground, not as bad as Forces, but nowhere near as good as Mania. The best place to start when looking for issues is the roster, because it's just kind of bizarre, and not in the fun way that Transformed was. Now to start, this game is actually back to being just a Sonic spin-off, meaning SEGA characters and any potential crossovers are just off the table this time. Of course, to start, you've got your predictable Team Sonic, Amy, Shadow, and Eggman all returning from the All-Stars games. Rouge and Omega, sure, makes sense. Big the Cat and a group of Chow? Why erase Cream? She wasn't even hated like Big was in Free Riders, so I really don't get the thought process. Silver, Blaze, and Vector? Weird because Vector already has a team, but again, why is he another tag-along like Free Riders? Then we have the villain team of Eggman, Metal Sonic, and Zavok. Yeah, I don't care at this point, fuck it. And that's it. Yep, that's all of them. No SBO, no Charmy, no Classic Sonic, no Mighty or Ray, no IDW, even though it would have been easy cross-promotion. Nope, that's it. That's everyone in the game. To compare this to Transform's 29 characters, there is a 14 character difference between the two. And hell, even the original All-Stars had 20 characters. This is somehow the smallest roster so far, and you'd think because it's Sonic exclusive, it would just expand their horizons, only having to focus on one franchise. Again, I don't even really mind the characters that are here, but that being where it ends? I just feel this game is lacking a lot of the key Sonic cast members, so when they're not here in this game, it's seriously noticeable. And let's take a look at the gameplay itself. And it's also worse. So you know the transform gimmick, allowing tracks to get more creative and feel different even in the same location? Yeah, it's just gone now. You're completely on land in this game and now you feature on a team mechanic, hence the name. And it's not terrible or anything, but it's not a huge game changer and makes up for the transform mechanic not being here. Passing items to each team member is an alright choice, and I do quite like the slipstream being an easy way to regain speed. But I feel like this is where all the strengths end, because I feel the cons majorly overweigh the pros. Like, since I mainly played on single player, I had to pray that my two bot teammates didn't ruin the game for me. Since results are tallied overall, meaning if you get first place but both of your teammates get dead last, you're gonna lose no matter what. Also, the fact you just can't customize your team is a huge missed opportunity. Like, you give us all these bunch of characters and you aren't even gonna let me mix and match them and cook up teams that the canon would never allow for. It's a huge opportunity that was missed here. A small nitpick I had with the team thing is that each character is just forced into a class that you can't change, sadly. Similar to Sonic Heroes, each team member is put into a certain class, either speed, technique, or power. However, if I wanted to be Omega, for example, I'm forced to play as a power character, even if I wanted to be a technique character. Again, not a huge deal breaker or anything, but it definitely makes me play as characters I know I will be better at compared to characters I actually want to play as. But you know, if you're not vibing with the team mechanic, you know, the main gimmick of the game, you can't play in solos, and well, then it's just boring. Like, sure, I don't need to rely on others, but there's no transformation in this game. I'm literally just playing the first game again with just some slightly better controls. And to give it some credit, it keeps transformations controls, so it does feel nice to move about. There's some choices I don't really like making music a weird filter when you're doing a stunt. And the cars do feel a little bit more weightier, to be honest. Again, it's not unplayable or anything, but it's a bit weird going from Transform to TSR. The amount of new tracks this game has to offer is also somehow less than Transform. In Transform, there were 21 tracks, 17 new and 4 returning from the original All-Stars. TSR as well also has 21 tracks, so that should be a good thing, right? Wait till you hear how many are comeback tracks. Team Sonic Racing features 12 new tracks and 9 returning tracks, practically half the game being old tracks. And if that wasn't bad enough, we're also back to the themed locales issue from the original All-Stars. Sure, at least each track looks visually different, probably set at a different time of the day or a different part of that map. But the fact that there's only 7 theme types in this game is laughable. Hell, every single track from the original All-Stars returns here with the same track design. Again, I don't really mind them cutting a corner and bringing back a good couple of tracks, or even just reusing the theme. But the fact that most of the tracks in this game just come off as copy-pasted makes the game just look glued together out of pre-existing assets. And tracks such as Ocean View from Transformed is worse because it cuts out the boat ending from the original track. Now, whilst I've only talked about this for Sonic R, I have to at least give credit on this game's OST, because as we'll see later, it seems like it was the only thing they were actually confident in. And I mean, I see why, whether it's an original song or a remix, it's some genuinely good stuff here. And Sega seems to get everyone on board with this OST too. Jun Senoue and Crush 40, T. Lopes, Tomoyo Otani. This was very much a big collaboration between so many talented Sonic music artists, and I will say it definitely paid off. The only obvious issue is this is a video game and not an album. So I wish the same level of quality was given to, you know, the game itself. But again, I will give credit where it's due, and it's definitely due here. The other big thing this game has to offer is its customization, which honestly is pretty alright. I think it's a tad limited, like each character is stuck in their own car, so you can't get super creative and put Tails in Sonic's car or something like that. You can change each car's colours, the type of materials it uses, and even upgrade certain aspects of it. I don't like how the ending to the upgrading system just makes every car gold, but I guess that's just a personal nitpick. This is genuinely a really good first step, but there definitely feels like there's a roof on how far you can go with the customization, and I hope in the future this can be fully fleshed out further. This game also has an online mode, but there really isn't a lot to say. It's a wildly known joke at this point that this game's online player base fell off hard. I mean, after all, there is a reason why people jokingly call this game Team Offline Racing. But for the small time I played with friends, it's fine. It's just really lacking in the amount of content.
Is he still recording, by the way?
Yeah.
Right, I have a message. Your fans are autistic.
Super autistic.
No battle modes, no really anything like Capture the Chow. Any extra modes are more just different ways of racing. Like King of the Hill, where it seems which team can stay in first the longest. Again, not surprised why it's super hard to find active lobbies. Unless you're playing with friends or playing on some sort of YouTube live stream or something, there's no point of booting up the online mode. And after a 9-year absence, we finally have a story mode back. Well, technically an adventure mode. And it's the worst one yet. Are you serious, bro? The presentation is just bad here, somehow a step down further than Free Riders. At the very least, its TV setup was cute and actually tried to make up for the lack of real cutscenes. TSR will just feature characters having back and forths in backgrounds of level locations. Like, characters will speak like we're in a 3D environment and we can see exactly what's happening, but it's a bunch of PNGs on miscellaneous backdrops. The story itself is also just not worth getting into, it's just too cookie cutter. Pretty much this dude Dodompa shows up and wants everybody to test out his race cars in a tournament. Everyone is honestly quite weirded out by this and thinks he's working with Eggman. Well, now that they've outright said it, you know that's not true. Turns out he just wanted really good drivers to test out his new friendship-based engine, but just wanted to keep it all under wraps. Eggman later comes in to steal it, most likely to become the fastest racer again like Free Riders. At a certain point, I just mentally switched off from this story because that basic plot twist is like a good 90% of the plot. Obviously, it goes without saying, but the characterization is just completely out of whack. Sonic is so eager to race when everyone is worried about the potential danger they're all in. Everyone else is super suspicious of Dodompa, so obviously they're all wrong. And the actual adventure mode itself just isn't fun. The game is cut into 7 chapters, which will feature a multitude of different types of missions. We've got stuff like races, Grand Prix, ring challenges, bullseye challenges, and a lot more. But the problem is the amount of tracks that are featured in TSR isn't enough to make a real adventure mode. You'll need to race on the same track so many times that it just gets exhausting. Like, at different points I just felt like quitting because I was just bored. For the record, I have about 7 hours of footage on the adventure mode. Sure, I spent 2 hours thinking I needed to get 100 stars just to reach the end. I mean, turns out I was wrong and wasted my time. But if we cut out that huge side quest, this still took about 5 hours to beat. That's just too long. In comparison, Free Riders had the longest story mode of 2.5 hours. And this is twice as long with less the content. And what do you unlock when you beat all this? 3 levels that were in the original All-Stars. I'm done. I'm done. The only other thing I want to talk about is this game's marketing, which just shows how truly sad this game is. I know it's technically not relevant to the game itself, but I don't know another time when I can talk about this. So the way this game was revealed wasn't with any gameplay or anything. No, just a cryptic teaser with the letter R, reusing the same design as seen in Sonic R, as if it's some sort of spiritual successor. And then in May of 2018, we got the game's name with a release window of winter 2018. Oh, no gameplay? Don't worry, Walmart just leaked screenshots. Throughout 2018, we pretty much got nothing. They just spit out a trailer every couple months. But it was pretty clear Sega was more preoccupied with Mania Plus releasing that summer. And then in October 2018, they just delayed the game. because only the best Sonic games get delays. Apparently the reason is just quality control, and I mean TSR is more or less pretty polished, so I can't say they didn't do that. And the game was now set to release in May 21st, 2019 instead of the still unknown winter window. The fact they were in October and they still hadn't given a release date should have been a huge red flag. But December 2018, the worst thing happened.
Looks like we got competition.
PlayStation announces that Crash Bandicoot would be releasing a remaster of his PS1 Crash Team Racing for June 21st, 2019, 1 month after Team Sonic Racing. Fuck. SEGA was already not confident in this game due to the lack of promotion, but now it definitely showed. All they do is show pieces of the soundtrack, which yeah, weren't bad, the songs were pretty good, but this was their main and pretty much only way of promoting the game. They then posted an animation tie-in, which was still pretty new at the time. It's cute, I guess, nowhere near as good as Mania Adventures, but still good. This was more or less before Frontiers' prologue kind of changed the formula of them being more action-oriented. They also did an IDW tie-in, which I actually own a copy of. I don't remember any of it, nor feel like I need to read it for the sake of the video, but from what I remember, it was fine. Nothing more really, just fine. The level of desperation culminated into one of the most poorly aged Sonic promos of all time. Aaron Webber, Sonic's social media manager at the time, calls up Aaron Hansen, a man who doesn't like Sonic, and Gerard the completionist. Do I need to even bring up why this is funny? It's such an awkward video since these guys have to force down their really overactive personality to promote a kid's game. And again, I don't feel like these guys have any sort of emotional attachment to Sonic, nor the brand itself. Then they get Jun Sonoe, the poor soul, to record a Big the Cat and meme song.
I am Big the Cat. No one can deny that. Everybody loves me, except for most people.
This was really the quality we had to suffer through at the time. And if things weren't looking dire enough, Paramount dropped the very long dreaded Sonic movie trailer, and everyone thought it was awful. The game dropped 21 days later. In the end, it was recently reported during a showcase of sales data that Team Sonic Racing has sold over 3 million copies over the past 6 years it's been on the market. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled announced it had reached 10 million. Those poor fuckers can't win. In conclusion, Team Sonic Racing is either a fine game or a bad game, depending on how you want to look at things. It's fine in the sense that it doesn't do anything game-breaking and can be seen as somewhat fun as an isolated experience, but as a bad game when looking at it as a follow-up to Transformed, as it lacks a lot of what made that game so special and unique, and in general just reuses so much from the past 2 games to a point where you just ask yourself, why don't you just go play those games? It's also quite sad as, like I said at the beginning, this game didn't really have a chance to succeed. This game was released when Sonic's popularity was at an all-time low, and his budgets were even lower. I do feel Sumo Digital really wanted to make a truly great game that would surpass, or at least stand side by side with Transformed, but it's truly a situation of wrong place and wrong time. The fact SEGA wasn't even willing to give it any future content, such as characters, cars, or levels, kinda just dug its own grave. Compared to the kart racer over the fence, Crash had so much content and continued to be updated over the course of 9 months. That game launched with 26 characters and ended with 56. And 6 years later, TSR is still sat with the same 15 we had at launch. Damn, just what a sad note we have to end on. And there we have it, every Sonic Racing game done. Fuck me, am I tired. To give context on how long this video has been in the works, I recorded my intro back in May when we had no idea much about what CrossWorlds had to offer. Hell, there wasn't even a release date announced at the time. Since then, the game's gonna release in about a month. Characters like fucking SpongeBob will be DLC, and it'll be a whopping $90. It's been a minute, but I think it's about time we get to the ranking part of this video, which is probably in the title. In number 9, coming in last place, is the original Sonic Drift. Number 8, we've got the follow-up, Sonic Drift 2. For number 7, it's Sonic Freeriders. 6th is the most recent, Team Sonic Racing. 5th is Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing. 4th is Sonic R. 3rd is Sonic Riders Zero Gravity. 2nd is Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. And 1st and the best Sonic racing game so far is the original Sonic Riders. Damn, has this been an interesting ride. The amount of incredible highs just to be followed up by next level lows is just genuinely shocking to me. It goes to show Sonic's huge inconsistency problem, which funny enough is the franchise's biggest consistency, is something that even runs into his spin-off games. Compared to his rival Mario, who got Mario Kart in 1992, and has just stuck with it and continued to tweak the formula, Sonic is constantly experimenting with different ideas, gimmicks, and even types of vehicles. It definitely makes him the more interesting series to follow, but clearly just doesn't have a consistent through line. So what does all this mean for CrossWorlds? It makes it brave, I'll tell you that much. Trying to combine all these different unique gimmicks and trying to combine them into one coherent game is definitely a really interesting move. It's definitely trying to be a huge crowd pleaser, but I don't know if it'll actually satisfy the fans it's trying to please. Like, the extreme gear being in the game is really cool, but I know people have been put off due to it not playing anything like the Riders games. And that $70 to $90 price tag is definitely pushing a lot of people off. With that said though, I am still really looking forward to what CrossWorlds has to offer. It seems to genuinely want to put the effort in and become something replayable for years to come. Already announcing paid and free DLC that'll last until Q3 2026, giving us a full year of extra content. That statement alone already blows Team Sonic Racing right out with the water. And while sure, adding other IPs may be controversial to people who just want a Sonic only racing game, I can see why it's done, as it'll be an easier way to get casual audience to buy a copy. I wonder after the final DLC pack has been released if that's going to be everything for the game, or they might add more depending on the feedback. But I guess only time will truly tell. I mean, this is all cool, but will it even feature my favourite character? I'm sold.
Sonic